Hi, Terry. As I mentioned, if you have any question about the exam, please put it on a slide or I'll get back to it at the end of the lecture. Thank you. Okay, learning objectives of this lecture is going to be about understanding the elements of the project appraisal for feasibility report, and also learn scoring models for comparison of different projects based on some criteria, and also how to use the decision matrix for project selection. Just give me a moment. I'm going to close my window so we don't have any noise during the lecture. Okay, so we are back on. So first of all, in terms of the feasibility report, so the aim of the project selection is that you got different ideas and the problems that you want to solve and different kind of projects, but you want to decide which project you want to choose. And based on that, you want to generate a feasibility report. And feasibility report normally consists of few elements. And that can be financial appraisal. So in terms of the cost elements and investment, how does it look like? In terms of the market appraisal, so how the market is going to react to this new product or new process or new thing that you want to have as a part of this project. And also technical appraisal, do you have enough technology in order to do this? How you want to support any issues after launching the project? It can also have socioeconomic appraisal, especially for the government-based project, how it's going to affect the society and the community and the well-being of people, etc. And some projects also may consider environmental appraisal, so how it's going to affect the environment. The result of this project, is it going to damage the environment? Is it going to produce something that is going to be good for the environment? And all those things can be a positive or negative values for any project. So a feasibility report considers all these elements prior to project adoption, but again, maybe not all of these projects for all of these appraisal would be necessary for all projects, but most of the time you would use majority of this appraisal for a project. Okay, so in terms of the financial appraisal, we discussed a little bit about that during the last lecture in terms of internal rate of return, in terms of discounted payback period, net present value, and all those things are the tools that can help us to differentiate one project from the another in terms of your return and the financial side of the project. But the other thing that you also need to consider is the market appraisal. So market appraisal look at what is going to be the future demand. Sometimes you got the existing product and you know that how much was the demand so far. And based on that, you can forecast how is going to demand look like in the future. But sometimes you got a new service or product that is going to be launched and you don't know how the demand is going to look like. Is it going to increase demand or is it going to be just a constant demand in the future? Or if demand at the start is going to be high, but as the project continues, the demand is going to be lower. So this is one thing that you need to do your research and understand how is the market demand going to be for the deliverables of the project. And the other thing is about the market share. So the thing that you're producing, who are the competitors? How you can do you have any market share, or you're a new company or a startup and you want to get the market share? So all these things has got positive and negative, which you can use it in your SWOT analysis as well. The other thing is about the current and future competition. So who are your competitors? Are you, for example, going to create a mobile phone, and then your competitor is going to be very big companies like Apple and Samsung. So how do you want to compete with them? And the other thing is about the location and accessibility of consumers. So is your consumer or your customer are going to be based on a specific location, or is it going to be internationally you're going to operate? So, and based on that, you may have different scenarios that you need to look at based on the economy and the customer perspective, their demand, etc. So the location and accessibility of the consumers is very important. The other thing is about the technological scenario. So is it a new technology? Do you have enough support for it? For example, if you launch product and if it doesn't work, so how do you want to back it up? And those kind of things that is important, not just within the project, which you need to understand that you need to have some technical elements to be addressed, and do you have personnel to do that? Even after the project, when you launch a product, you also need to consider that there might something happen in the future, and you want to have some people in terms of technology backup in order to just get things back in order if something happens. The other thing is about the pricing options. So how much is going to be your final cost, and how much is going to be your profit margin, how you want to price it, those kind of things about your marketing appraisal. And the other thing is about the consumer behavior. So what are the motivation, their attitude, preferences, requirements, all these things you need to look at. So, what consumer wants, because at the end, if your project is producing something that is going to be used by a consumer, whether it's a building, a software, or anything else, you need to understand what consumer wants and needs. Based on that, you develop things. If you're working on something that you think that is good, but perhaps it's not something that is required or preferred by consumers, then perhaps that project is not going to be successful. Although that your product sounds very robust and something that you think that it's going to be great. The other thing is about the distribution channels and marketing policies. So this is equally important to everything else and can be a failure factor in the project. If you don't know how the supply chain is going to work, how do you going to distribute the product, how do you want to market it in order to get the consumer in order to purchase your product. So all these things are important. And also the other thing is about the administrative, technical, and legal constraint. Is there any particular regulation for the product that you want to offer? Is there any policy? Is there any standard that you need to follow for this particular product? So all these things also you need to look at before selecting a project. Okay, so the other thing is about the technical appraisal. So in technical appraisal, you look at the preliminary test and studies. So you design how you want to test this product, and based on that, how different project is going to compare against each other. And also availability of the raw materials and other resources that you need to for a specific project, and how it's compared with the other projects. The other thing is about the optimal scale of operation. So how do you want to operate during the project and after launching of the project? So how your workforce is going to look like? Where are you located? And those kind of things, and how many technical staff you would need to have. Choice of suitable production process. This is another thing. So when your project is finished, your prototype is looking great, how you want to mass scale it and produce it, let's say for 1 million or 10 million customers. And also choice of appropriate machine and equipment that you want to use the project. So these things are based on different projects. For some project, you may have some machine equipment that you need to hire. For other project, you need to buy. For the other project, you may not need any machine or equipment, and everything can be done using a computer or software. The other thing is about recycling and waste disposal. So you need to look at it if you got any product, how is going to be life cycle of that, and what's going to happen to that after the life cycle is finished. Are you responsible for the recycling and the waste collection, or someone else? So how do you address that? And the other thing is about the proper layout of plants and buildings. So if you're doing a new manufacturing or new building, so every thing needs to be done before different project selection, so you can really understand what would be the benefits and drawbacks of each project. So the other thing is about the realistic work schedule. So during the project and the environment that you're working on, is it how the work schedule is going to look like? Is it going to, you can expect some extra time and extra hours or working during the weekend, or the schedule is 40 hours per week or less than that? So all these things that you need to consider and to see that how long it's going to take to finish this project. And the other thing is about the socially acceptable technologies. So this is particularly important. If everything else, it sounds fantastic. For example, we got a very high rate of return, and the market, you can see that it's going to be very good for you. You can sell your product, but you're developing something that might not be socially acceptable in that particular environment. An example of that can be that you're developing a robot to replace workers like in McDonald's. So because in this environment that's very high unemployment rate we got, so although that this technology can reduce the cost for McDonald's in terms of doing the job, and so they just use a capital investment, they don't need to pay a salary things, but socially it's not going to be acceptable in this environment because you're replacing a robot with some people that they gonna lose their jobs. So that is another thing that you need to look at before selecting a project based on the environment that you're looking. The other thing is about the socio-economic appraisal. It's very important for the government-based project and the project that is going to involve a big portion of society. So you may have a social cost-benefit analysis. So social cost benefit or societal cost benefit analysis is looking look at not just the actual cost. So for example, the money that you paid and the money that you received. So it's also looking at some other elements. So how it's going to affect uh, people behavior, jobs creation, and those kind of thing in long term, people satisfaction of the life, and those kind of thing that is important for the government. And the other thing that you need to look at is the impact of the project on distribution of income to society. So sometimes the project may not have like a big rate of return, but it produced a lot of jobs, and then it's going to be preferred if you're working in a government and you're selecting the projects. And the other thing is going to be impact on the level of savings and investment in society. And this is also benefiting the society. So if the projects, it's something that people can save, can have like a lower cost and lower taxes, etc. So that would be also great. Jobs creation, so higher education and the skills. You want to invest on something to providing new skills to job seekers. So that also is going to be preferably looked if you are a government entity. And also recreation facilities and also the other things that the governments provide for the society. The other aspect is going to be environmental appraisal. Used to be something that some companies just ignore that, but nowadays it's a big issue and is supported by the governments around the world. And also the companies is getting more and more interested in order to produce something that is going to be good for the environment. So reducing the greenhouse gas emission and global warming is one thing that can benefit your project in that perspective, and enhance and protect biodiversity and ecosystems, so all the animals, plants, and human can live together peacefully. Improve air and water quality, which is going to be important for the society, reducing waste and landfill, and encourage recycling, reusing, which is part of the circular economy. So circular economy says that everything that you produce, you don't waste it, you get it back into life in one form or another. So you can just reuse it, recycle it, or just break it down to its basic elements and make a new product and those kind of things. The other thing is about something that avoid deforestation or limit use of farmland. So especially in the infrastructure and building projects, it's very important in the area that you want to develop a new uh, infrastructure or community. So this is important that you avoid any deforestation. Conserve natural energy resources, minerals, and materials using renewable energy. Those kind of things also going to look favorably by the consumers and also investors. So those kind of things is also important, and you can, in your environmental appraisal, you can see it as the benefits when you're comparing different projects. Okay, so as you can see, there are many factors that you need to have a look. For example, from the technical, market appraisal, environmental, socioeconomic, financial side of things. And so how do you compare different projects? So you got different selection criterias, and you want to have a model in order to see that which project is going to look like better, considering all these elements that you just did your research, and you want to come up with the best project in order to continue with that project. So one basic model is going to be unweighted binary model, or 0 to 1. So either you meet that criteria or you don't meet the criteria. The other, and unweighted means that all selection criteria are equally important. So not one criteria is not important than the other. The other is the unweighted factor model, which it's not binary anymore, so it's not either have it or not have it, 0 or 1. It's going to be like a scale, like from 0 to 5 or 0 to 10 or 0 to 100, something like that. And the other thing is going to be weighted factor model, which is different criteria may have different weights. So for example, you want to put more weight on environmental perspective or socioeconomic perspective or financial perspective. So that way you can use weighted factor model. And the more advanced version is going to be decision matrix, which I'm going to discuss more at the end of this lecture. Okay, first, let's start with unweighted binary factor model. So in this model, you just list all the selection criteria or factors as we discussed, and you score the project on each selection criteria. Either this project is going to meet that criteria or doesn't, so it's just 0 or 1. There is nothing in between. And you get, for each project, you get the total score. And then based on the highest total score is going to be your preferred project in order to go ahead with that project. So the main advantage is that you are using multiple criteria, but there are many disadvantages, such as it assumes all criteria of equal importance, which is not the case. For some companies, the financial incentive is going to be higher. For the other companies, maybe the environmental incentive or socioeconomic incentive is going to be higher. So if it's the case, perhaps this model is not going to generate the best result for them. And the other disadvantage is that it's just binary, so it's 0 or 1, nothing in between. So sometimes Maybe this project is just partially satisfying that criteria, and giving it a 0 is not going to be fair. Or although that a specific project providing most of the requirement for the criteria, but there are some elements that is missing, in that situation, you tend to give it 1, but it's not really 1 if you, for example, compare to other project that just meet all the requirements. So these are the main disadvantages, and based on that, this model is not commonly used. This is an example that you can see there are different criteria. For example, no increase in energy requirements, and you see that this project is qualified or doesn't qualify, and based on that, you get the score. And you can see that's the total score. There's 12 for different criteria, these 17 criteria that you can see. And you can do it the same for different projects and see that which project gets the highest score. Okay, the other model that you can use is the unweighted factor scoring model. So it's not the binary anymore. So you got the scale from, let's say, 1 to 5, can be excellent, good, fair, poor, very poor, or can be broader than that, 1 to 10 or 0 to 100, whatever you want to choose, it's fine. And in that particular scenario, you again, for each criteria, you give the number and you sum it up and see that which project is getting the higher score. But now you can have a higher, you got a broader scale in order to use, because it's not just 0 and 1. The disadvantage is going to be, again, all the factors are equally important. So less important factors are weighed the same as the important. So this is an example. For example, you can see that you got a score from 1 to 5. So if the quality of the final product is significantly and visibly improved, you can get 5. On the other hand, if the quality of the final product is significantly and visibly lowered, you can get 1 score, and you can do it for different projects. So this is another example. You can see poor, fair, good, very good, and excellent, and each has a score associated to that. So for example, cost is fair, so you got a 2 score for that project. The risk is relatively high, so you got the score of, sorry, the risk is relatively low, so you got a good score. You got 3, and return is very good, so you got a very good and 4 score. Hazard is pretty high, so you got a fair score, and you got 2, so this is your total score, as you can see here. The other method is, which is more commonly used, is a weighted factor model. So in this method, you got each factor is weighed relative to its importance. So this weighing allows important factor to stand out because they got the higher values for that particular factor is going to weigh on the total score or average score. And that way, if you got a selection criteria or factor that is more important than the others, the way that you score that factor is going to dominate your total score. So this is the formula that you use. It's very simple, although that it doesn't look like here. So maybe I can just describe it in this example. So let's say that you got these 5 factors of cost of living, proximity to family, climate, transportation system, and quality of life. Let's assume that you want to go to another country or another city, and you're looking at your options. And you got 2 locations, location 1 and location 2, and your weigh your factor. So you want, the climate is very important to you and the quality of life is very important to you. So you got these 2 got higher rate, let's say 30, but maybe the cost of living, so you're a rich person, the cost of living is not an important factor to you, or transportation system, you just want to be close to your workplace or your study place, so transportation is not a big issue for you. And based on that, you look at different location 1 and location 2. Let's say location 1 is Sydney, location 2 is Melbourne. And you look at those things and you provide from, let's say, 1 to 5 or 0 to 5, you get the number. So cost of living, let's say, for location 1 is pretty cheap. It's not the case in Sydney, but let's assume for that location, the cost of living is pretty cheap. So it's got a 5 score, but in location 2 is relatively expensive. So it's got a score of 2. So the way that you put the weighted score is just like you got the weight factor of 10. So you got 10 multiplied by 5. So it's going to be 50 for location 1. And 2 multiplied by 10 is going to be 20 for location 2. And you'll do it the same thing for all the 5 factors, as you can see here, and you get your weighted score. So 2 things that you can do. One thing is just you sum up all the scores, and the one with the higher score, as you can see, the location 2 is going to be a preferred location. The other thing that also generate the same result is going to be just average. So just average all these things and see that which one is giving you the highest average. So the advantage of a scoring model is that you can have multiple criteria, and if each criteria has got different weights. So it's simple to evaluate and compare. As you can see, the calculations are pretty simple. And also it's the direct reflection of the managerial policy, because you want to put your own weight. So, one thing is more important than the others. So you can easily alter that. So for example, if you see that maybe your weighing is not that fair, you want to change your weighing or your scoring. It's a little bit subjective, and all the scoring models are more or less the same. They are subjective to the person that gives the score. In order to reduce the subjectivity, you can just ask a few people in order to give a score, and you can get the average score for each criteria. So it's this way model is giving you opportunity to give more weight to important factors. So this is one of the advantages. And the sensitivity analysis is going to be easy. So because you change the weight, and you see that how your final score is going to be affected. So disadvantages of a scoring model is going to be relative and subjective, as I mentioned, but as you can ask a few people in order to reduce the subjectivity. And elements are assumed to be independent. This is also very important because some factors and some elements may or affect the other elements. So when you score one, the score that you give into one can affect the other one. But the way that you're doing the scoring model, it's independent of the effect of each factor on the other. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. And also for unweighted models, which is not preferable, so assume equal importance for each factor. Okay, so before I'm going to describe the decision matrix, which is a little bit harder concept, so I need your 100% concentration. Before that, if you have any questions with regards to the thing that I just discussed about the selection methods, let me know, and just refresh your mind, because the decision matrix is a little bit tricky. So I need to have your 100% attention. So if you have any questions so far about the thing that I discussed, let me know. If you have any questions other than the thing that we discussed, just please put it on a slide. I'll get back to it at the end of the lecture. Okay, seems no question. So again, please pay attention because decision matrix is a little bit tricky. So I hope that I got your full attention. Okay, so decision matrix is sometimes you got the selection criteria, which some of them are quantitative, so are numbers, and some of them are qualitative. So it's good or bad, excellent, those kind of things. And you want to do some calculations. So you cannot put good, very poor, or excellent in your calculations. So you need to change it into a number in order for you to do the calculation. So decision matrix will allow that for you. The other thing is that for some criteria, you want the highest number is preferable. So for example, for internal rate of return, the higher return is more preferable than the low return. But for some other factor like investment, you want to have the lower score. So you want to have lower investment for that project to be preferable. Or lower payback period. You want to have lower payback period for that particular project to be something that you want to pursue. So there's a mix of something that you want to increase and some other factor that you want to decrease. So it's a little bit complicated from the first look compared to the other methods that we discussed, because for the other methods, always you want to get the highest score. But in this method, for some criteria, the lowest score is actually the preferred one. So here as an example, you can see we've got 6 criteria. So it's investment, internal rate of return, payback period, environmental disturbance, future growth, and community development. So for the investment, as you can see, is a 10 to 2. And the reason is the 2 is your best number. So it's the preferred number. So it comes to the end. And 10 is the number that is going to be very high cost and you want to avoid. So that's the reason you got from 10 to 2, not 2 to 10. But on the other hand, the internal rate of return, 10 is the not preferred one and 40 is the preferred one. So it's 10 to 40. And the payback period, like investment, the 10 is not preferred, comes first, and the 2 is the preferred one, come later. So this is the range. For environmental disturbance, you got from very high, high, medium, low, very low. Again, very high comes first because it's not preferred in order to have very high environmental disturbance, and the very low comes last because it's something that is perfect. The same thing for the future growth, that you want to have a high future growth, so very good comes at the end. And also the community development, which is something that you want to increase, so very good comes to the end. So let's have a look, and let's say that you got 5 different projects. And for each of those criteria, as you can see on the left-hand side, for each project, you give a score. As you can see, for the first 3 criteria, investment, internal rate of return, and payback, because those are the financial values and quantitative values, so you can just put some numbers for each, as you can see for all the projects. But for the other 3 criteria, which is C4 to C6, is qualitative criteria. So it's based on how do you describe it? Is it high, low, good, bad? Those kind of things. So, but regardless, you just put it like this, and later you can transfer some of these qualitative measures into some values. The other thing is that for C1, which is the investment, C3, which is the payback period, and C4, which is environmental disturbance, you want to minimize them. So you want to have minimized investment as a preferred project, minimized payback period, and also minimize environmental disturbance for that particular project to be attractive. On the other hand, for C2, C5, and C6, which is the internal rate of return, future growth, and community development, you want to maximize them because you want to have high return, you want to have high future growth and high community development. So these are the things that benefits you, so you want to maximize them. If you look at this table, you can see that let's say for the first criteria, you got C1 and you got different numbers for different projects. And the highest number is 10 and the lowest number is 2. But as we said, you want to minimize. So your aim is to minimize this in order for the project to be perfect. So the 2 is your best number. So P5, project number 5 offering the best value for investment. And project 1 offers the highest investment cost, which is not preferred. So the one that is preferred, you just bold it. And the one that is not preferred, you just underline it, okay? So as you compare different projects, the highest number here is not preferred because you want to minimize the cost of investment. So you just underline it. And project 5 offering the lowest cost of investment, and you want to minimize the cost of investment. So number 2 here is bold and is your perfect one. So you also do it the same for all other criteria for different projects. For example, for C2, which is the opposite case. So for C2, you want to increase your internal rate of return. So the highest number, which is 40, is preferred. So based on that is bold. And the lowest number, which is 10, it's underlined because it's giving you the lowest internal rate of return, which is not preferred. Okay, we got a question here. If C4 should be minimized, why is very high preferred in C4 column? So let's have a look. So C4, which is environmental disturbance, you want to have it minimize it. So then the very low should be preferred and very high, it shouldn't be preferred. So yes, that's right. I think that is a mistake here. I'll have a look again, but I think that you're right. It should be the other scenario, which the very low environmental disturbance is preferred. So it should be bold, and very high should be underlined. I'll update the slides. I'll have a look again, and if it's correct, I'll update the slides and send it to you. Okay. So that was one example. Another example I want to give you with lower number of criteria. So we can also do some calculations and show you how the calculation can be done. So let's say that we got 3 projects here and 4 criteria. And it's going to be this project for a construction of a structure, and each proposing use of different material. And the following 4 criteria are considered in assessment. So C1 is going to be total estimated embodied energy, and C2 is going to be life cycle cost, and C4 is going to be recyclability, and C4 is going to be local availability. So as you can see, the C1 and C2 are, you can get some values, so they are quantitative, and C3 and C4 are qualitative value, which is from the very low to very high. So let's go step by step. First of all, we are going to make our matrix. So we got different projects, A1, A2, or A3. So you can also put it P1, P2, and P3. It doesn't make any difference. And you got 4 criteria, C1, C2, C3, and C4. C1 and C2, you got the values. And C3 and C4, you just did the assessment qualitatively. For C1 and C2, you want to minimize them. So you want to minimize the total estimated embodied energy. So which means that is better for the environment if the embodied energy is going to be lower. So you want to minimize that. And the life cycle cost, obviously you want to minimize that as well, because at any time you want to minimize your costs and maximize your profits. But on the other hand, for C3 and C4, you want to maximize them, because C3 is your recyclability, so you want to have a product that is more recyclable, and C4 is local availability. So if the product is going to be available compared to another product that is not much available in that area, then the local availability is going to be preferred to you. So you want to maximize that. And you put all your score, regardless it is going to be a number or is it going to be just a qualitative measurement. So this is the first step, pretty easy. So let's say what you do next. The next step is going to give all these qualitative measures some numbers. And how would you do that? So you need to bring it to a scale. So the scale range can be from 0 to 5, 0 to 10, or 0 to 100. It really doesn't matter. It just depends on the accuracy of your measurements. So, but normally 0 to 10 or 0 to 5 is something that you would use. Okay, and how do you put the numbers? Remember that some elements you want to minimize and some elements you want to maximize. So very high, it's not always the best number. So you cannot just give the highest number to very high. If it's the cost attributes, so very high cost is not preferred. So you shouldn't give the highest number if the criteria is the cost. So it's going to be inverse. So for the cost attributes, very high will give the lowest score and very low gives the highest score. So you can, for example, start from 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and very high gives 1, high gives 3, average gives 5, low gives 7, and very low gives 9 in terms of the cost attributes. So you can change these numbers. It's not, for example, you can put 0 to very high or 2 to very high. So the way that you choose it, as long as it's the same for all the projects, then it's applicable. But on the other hand is the benefit attributes. So for the benefit attributes, so for example, it can be better recyclability. So if it's very high, you want to give higher score compared to the cost, which was the opposite. So if you got very low recyclability, you give 1, and if you got very high recyclability, which is a benefit, you give 9. So if you do that, so let's go back to this matrix again. So you can see high, low, very high, average, very high, high. And based on the scale that you put, you give them some numbers, which you can see here. So for example, 7 in C3 is attributed to high in C3. So high C3 and C3 is something that we want to maximize, is the benefit. So based on this scale, you can see high for benefit attributes, 7. So you put 7 here. Let's have a look at another, for example, for project A1, C4. So C4 was average for project 1. So average, regardless of the cost or benefit, is 5. But we know that is a benefit attributes. And if we put 5 here. So the same thing for the others, you just put the numbers. And as you can see, this matrix, which is a combination of the values and qualitative measures, is all going to be values and quantitative measures. So Now you got a matrix that you got all the values. The next step is going to be how would you do the calculation in order to realize which project is preferred compared to the others. So there is a lot of more calculation that needs to be done. So this is just the beginning. So please pay attention as I go through it, which is a little bit complicated. So please give me your full attention. Okay, so this is your matrix. But as you can see, the numbers are not in the same range. So for example, for C1, you got numbers from 50, 100, you C2, you got 80, 130. But for C3 and C4, your numbers is just between 1 and 10. So 9, 5, 3, 7. So the problem is that although, for example, for C1, 75 is going to be average compared to this project, but it's going to be much higher compared to 5, which is average in this criteria. So these two numbers are not comparable. So we need to fix that. We need to normalize it in order to compare these two values. The other thing is a difference between these numbers. So this is, we know that C3 and C4 is from 0 to 10. But for C1 and C2, we don't have any scale. So we want to make all these numbers in the same range. So, and based on that, we are using this normalized decision matrix or R matrix, which gives you the values between 0 to 1. And hence, you can compare all the values in different criteria because you know all are in the same range from 0 to 1 based on the calculation that you did. And this calculation, it takes into account in two things. One is going to normalize it. All the numbers is going to be 0 to 1. And the other thing, look at the variance from the minimum to maximum. So it's from 50 to 100 or 5 to 9. And based on that, it provides the values for you. So I don't want to go through the all details of the math that brings you this matrix, but I'm just going to show you how it's going to be calculated and why we are doing this. Okay, before that, we got some question here. Yep, the scores are all subjective, as I mentioned, for decision matrix and all the weighted methods. And one way that you can reduce subjectivity, as we discussed, just to ask few people to give the score. The higher the number of people gives you a score and the average that you choose, then it's going to help you in order to reduce the subjectivity. So this is like a mathematic way in order to normalize the scores. As I said, I'm not going to go through all the details of the math, but to just know that's why we are doing this, and that would be enough for that. So R is just a value that you give it. So it's just a normalized decision matrix. So you can call it R or anything else, but normally it's called R, and this is the equation that you use. And you need to use the equations. So it's not just saying that you won't use this equation. You will use this equation, but how it's being generated and derived. So this is another thing that is not are subject to this, to go through that how we use the normalized matrix. But the way that I mentioned to you is just based on two factors. One factor is that we want to make sure that all the numbers that we got here is going to be from 0 to 1. And the way that you're doing that, you're getting the average, score root average, in order to make sure that all the numbers are between 0 to 1. And the other thing is just because it's each factor, each number is going to be divided by the sum of factors in that. So the deviation from the average is going to also affect the result. So this is going to be too much mathematics. I don't want to go through that, and it's going to be complicated. But as long as you know that how it's going to be calculated and how this R value is going to work, that would be enough for this course. Okay, so let's go through it. And if I go through that, it's going to be much more simpler than it looks. So let's go through one by one. So for C1, for A1 project, we got the value of 50. So how do we normalize it? As you can see here, you got 50 on the top, and this is going to be divided by this equation. So what is this equation? As you can see, is a 50 squared. So the first value in the C1 column plus 75 squared, which is the second value in this C1 column, plus 100 squared, which is the third value for the third project in this column. And you just sum all of that, and you get a square root of that. And this 50 value divided by this equation, it gives you this 0.37, which is going to be normalized value for criteria 1 for project A1. And you would do the same thing for project A2 and C2. So instead of 50, putting 50 here, you put 75. Okay, you put 75 here, and this part of equation is going to be the same. So again, it's going to be the first value in the first column, the second value in the first column, and the third value in the first column. So, and for the third one, which is the C1 criteria for project A3, instead of like putting 50 here in the example, you put 100 here, but everything else in the rest of the equation is going to be the same as A1, C1. And for the rest, you are doing the same. So for 130, you also put 130, and you'll divide it by using the same methodology for all numbers in this column. So it's going to be 130 squared plus 80 squared plus 110 squared, and you just get the square root of all of that, and then you divide 130 by that value. So if you do all these equations, then you get these matrix, okay? So this is the way that you calculate. If it's not clear, let me know, I'll explain again. Yeah, everything is examinable. Okay, so seems okay. So we got one question here: why don't we just multiply the numbers for a single project? So the reason, as I mentioned, you cannot do that because you got numbers in different range. Okay, so here, as you can see, for project A1, the criteria 1 is got 50, and for criteria 4 is got 5. So 50 is 10 times of 5. Okay, what does it mean that 50 is much higher than 5 in this? It's not, because they are in a different range. So in that case, actually 50 is the lowest number, but in the other case, 5 is the average. So because they are not in the same range, you cannot compare it. If you look at the same number, 50 and 5, when it's normalized, you can see that the A1C1 is going to be 0.37, but A1C4 is going to be 0.4. So actually, the normalized factor for A1C4 is higher than A1C1. But if you don't do the normalization, it gives you an error because it shows you that A1 C1 is got a higher number compared to the 5. And the reason is that because each criteria has got different range. For C3 and C4, you got a range between 0 to 10. But for C1, you got up to 100. For C2, you got up to 130. So they are in different range. So they are not comparable until you make it in the same range. So it's going to be 0 to 1. So if you set it all on a full scale of 100, such as change 5 into 50 or 9 into 90, it's not the same because as you can see, the C2, your highest number is 130. And the other thing is that is 100 is maximum? Maybe not. Maybe it's 100 is not equal to 10. Maybe it's 100 is equal to 7 or 8. So you don't know. So the way that you do it is based on the numbers that you already have. And the way that you do this calculation is to look at different numbers for different projects. And based on that, gives an a kind of know what's the range and the scale that's ranging to from 0 to 1, and also know how much is going to be difference between each value. So in exam, do we need to find every individual score of each project, or they are given? So I'm not going to disclose any question in the exam, but all the thing that would be necessary for you to do your calculation then is provided, and all the questions are straightforward. So I'm not going to reveal what kind of question you would have in the exam or what would be given in the exam. So after normalization, is C1 and C2 column still lower value preferred? So I'm not finished yet, just hang on guys. So there are some other steps that we need to go through in order to see that which one is preferred. So until now, we just did the normalization. So we make sure that all the criteria are in the same range. So we can compare different criteria. Then we need to put some weight for each criteria based on the weight we have. But at the moment, we are considering that all the criteria are having the same weight. And based on that, we are giving the value from 0 to 1. Okay. We still cannot decide on which one is preferred because we still don't know what is going to be the weight factor for each criteria. If all the factors C1 to C4 is going to be the same, equally important, then perhaps now we can just look at the preferred projects based on the values that we got here. But let's wait and to see that's what's happened after that. Or maybe we can get a break now. Let's have a because we also have got a lot of things to cover today, and I want to give some time for your question and consultation. So let's get about 5 minutes break. So you can also have a look more about this calculation and how it's done. Maybe you can just do the calculation yourself to see that how it's been done. And so you get better idea before we go into the next section in order to put the weight for each factor and do the final preference. So let's break. Let's have a break until 2:10 Sydney time, and we'll get back and go through the rest of the equation. In the meantime, feel free to do the calculation yourself and see that how it's compared with the screen. Okay, so let's continue. If you have any questions so far, if the I don't know if you've done the calculation or not, or if you've done it and you run into any problem, let me know. Otherwise, let's continue. So far you got this normalized decision matrix, or R, as you can see here, and all numbers are between 0 to 1, regardless of the initial value. That can be anything. So the next step, we want to put the weight on each criteria. So some criteria are important than the others. So, and for each criteria, so this is C1, C2, C3, and C4, we want to put the weight on that. So let's say that the criteria 1 is got 20% weight, so we want 0.2 here. Criteria 2 is got 40% importance, so you got 0.4 here, and criteria 3 is 10% important with 0.1, and criteria 4 is 30%, so the weight, and we got 0.3 here. So the sum of all these weight is going to be equal to 1, okay? So 0.2 plus 0.4 plus 0.1 plus 0.3, it equals 1. And again, the way that you put is based on is subjective, based on the value that you choose. And if you want to reduce the subjectivity, you can ask different people to put different weight, and you can get an average weight. Okay, but let's for now assume that you got this weight for each column. Each column and is your criteria. So you got 4 columns, which means that you got 4 criteria. So, and the way that you're going to make the V matrix, which is the weighted decision matrix, or V, you just need to multiply each column by this number. So 0.37 multiplied by 2, you put it here. 0.55, you multiply it by 0.2, you put it here, and do the same for this. And for the next column. For the next column, you multiply 0.69 by 0.4, put it here. You multiply 0.42 by 0.4, and you put it here, and you do the rest for the rest of your values. And this is your weighted decision matrix, or V, which each value is multiplied by the weight factor for each criteria. So this is your V matrix. Okay, we got a question. We choose the way according to our experience. Yes, it's based on your experience or your preference, or the company, for example, might have put more value in the financial side or environmental side. So this is the manager decide which value is more important than the other, or ask few other people and get an average in terms of the weight that you want to choose. Because if you don't do that, for example, the environmental aspect is going to have the same importance as the economical value. Maybe it's a case for you, but maybe it's not the case for another project, or maybe one case, the social side is very important for your, for example, your government project, and the economic and rate of return is not, or investment is not a big issue for you. So you want to have like putting less weight on that and putting more weight on the socioeconomic perspective. Okay, so now you got your V matrix, which these values is also factored in the way that you put for each criteria. So you got C1, C2, C3, and C4 for each column. And as we mentioned earlier, so C1, so let's have a look at this again. So C1 and C2, we want to minimize them. C3 and C4, we want to maximize them, okay? So based on that, for C1 and C2, the lowest value needs to be bold, which means that's our preferred value, and the highest value needs to be underlined, which is our the worst scenario. And for C3 and C4, we want to maximize them. So the highest value are going to be bold, and the lowest value is going to be underlined. Okay, so let's have a look at our V matrix again. So again, for C1 matrix, C1 column, we want to have the lowest value bold, which is our preferred value, and the highest value, which is 0.14 here, going to be underlined. The same thing for the C2 column. The lowest value, which is 0.17, is going to be bold, and the highest value, 0.27, is going to be underlined. On the other hand, for C3 and C4 is the opposite. The lowest value, which is here, is 0.07. You're going to be, the highest value, which is the 0.07 here, is going to be bold, and the lowest value, which is 0.025, is going to be underlined because we want to maximize it. And for C4, again, we want to maximize it. So 0.21 is our highest value, is bold, and 0.12, which is our lowest value, is underlined. Okay. So you can see all the preferred values are bold and all the worst values are underlined. So what do we do next? So based on this matrix and based on finding our preferred, our most preferred and least preferred values, then we create these two ideal and negative ideal solutions. So the ideal solution, or V star, is going to be the lowest value of C1 and lowest value of C2, because we want to minimize C1 and C2, and highest value of C3 and highest value of C4, because we want to maximize C3 and C4. So if we look again at our matrix, so the lowest C1 is going to 0.07. We put it here. This is our ideal for C1. For C2, the ideal, which is bold here, is 0.17. We put it here in our V star. And for C3, is going to be 0.07, which is the highest value. We put it here. And for C4, is going to be 0.21. We will put it here. So this is going to be our V star, or ideal solution, which gives us the lowest CI and C2 and the highest C3 and C4. On the other hand, we got a negative ideal, which gives us the least preferred solution. So what are the least preferred solution? It's just the opposite of the V star. So it's going to be high C1, high C2, and lowest C3 and lowest C4. So we just pick the underlying scores. So 0.14 for C1, 0.27 for C2, 0.02 for C3, and 0.12 for C4. So now we got the ideal solution, V star, and negative ideal solution. Why do we need those solutions? So let's see how we are going to use them in the next step. In the next step, we are going to compute the separation measures from the ideal and the negative ideal for all projects. So how we are going to do that? So we are going to get so we got two things. One is SI star and S minus star. SI star and SI minus. So for S star, we get the square root of sum of squares of J1 to 4, which means that column 1 to column 4. Vij, so if we are in the first row, which is going to be V1, V11 minus Vj star, V12 minus Vj star. And again, so this gives you the SI. And for the S minus I, which is negative ideal solution, you do the same, but this time you just deduct it from the Vj minus, which is your negative ideal solution. So it's going to be V11 minus Vj negative or minus. And you do the same, and you get your S1 star and S1 star, S2 star, S3 star, and they get the same thing, S minus 1, S minus 2, S minus 3. So here's an example. So let's go through it one by one. So this is the first value, which is the I is equal to 1 and J is equal to 1. So it's going to be V11. So V11 is going to be 0.074 minus V1 star. So V1 star is going to be the first value in your V star, which is 0.074, which is the same thing as that. So this part is going to be 0. Go to the next one. So going to be Vij in this term is going to be V12. So V12 is going to be this term. So 0.27. So 0.27 minus V2 star. So V2 star, as you can see, is point. I need a dot here. 0.17. So I deducted from 0.17, and I got this square. Move on. The next one is going to be V13, which is this value, V13 minus V3 star. V3 star is going to be the third value in our V star solution. And you do it the same, and you got this one. So you do all this calculation. You got from S star 1, S star 2, and S star 3, because you got 3 projects, you got 3 rows. And you do the same for S minus 1, S minus 2, and S minus 3. Okay, so after you've done it, you got the ideal solution. So you got the ideal solution, and you got negative ideal solution. If you all this calculation, and I encourage you to do the calculation yourself after we finish this lecture in order to get better grasp of how the calculation has been done. And then you get these 6 values. So S1 star, S2 star, S3 star, S1 minus, S2 minus, S3 minus. And here you are all the values, ideal solution and negative ideal solution. So then the step for each alternative, you determine the relative closeness to the ideal solution. So for C star 1, C star 2, and C star 3, based on how many projects do you have. So one thing that I need to note here, this C1 start is not related to the C1, C2, C3, which is your criteria. So it's a different thing. So for C1 star, it's going to be S minus 1 divided by the sum of S star 1 plus S minus 1. So, and when you calculate it, you get the C star 1.36. For C2 star, you got 0.7, and for C3 star, you got 0.42. One thing that you need to note that the closeness rating is a number between 0 to 1, with 0 being the worst possible and 1 is the best possible solution. So these are your final values. So it's which are attributed to each project. So C1 star is attributed to project 1, C2 star attributed to project 2, and C3 star is attributed to project 3. So you want to choose the highest value solution, which is in this case is going to be the C2 star. So that gives you the best possible solution. So in this case, the preference is going to be the project A2, which has the highest CS star, and the least favorable one is going to project A1, which has got the lowest C1. Okay. So let's have a look why A2 is being preferred. So A2, as you can see, in terms of the criteria one, which is embodied energy, it's got like average. But in terms of the life cycle cost, it's got the lowest life cycle cost, which you can see is both. In terms of the recyclability, and it's low, which is not very good. And in terms of the local availability, it's very high, which also gives the bold value here. So as you can see, the weight that you put for C2, which is the life cycle cost, is the highest, is 0.4. And the project A2 providing the lowest life cycle cost. And one of the reasons that at the end, the A2 project is being preferred is because you got the lowest value of life cycle cost for project A2, and you got the highest weights for this criteria. On the other hand, for the recyclability, although that this project has got very low recyclability, so it's not preferred, but the weight that you put is just 0.1, so it's not got very high weight for this criteria. So it didn't affect the total result that much. So as you can see, the effect of weights on final decision is very obvious. So, and this is a sensitivity analysis. So maybe you want to change, after you're getting this result, you might want to slightly change your weights. So for example, instead of putting 0.4, if it's allowed, you want to see that how the result is going to look like if you put 0.3 or 0.35 to life cycle cost, and also change the other cost, change the other weight in order to get the sum of one, and do the calculation again. So you are not going to do this calculation, obviously, just write it down. So you just use an Excel file or software to do the calculation for you. And so as long as you give the input and change the input, so you can just get the results. So as long as you know how the results are calculated, so you can generate that Excel file or software to do the calculation for you. The rest is just giving the inputs and getting the output. So it's going to be pretty straightforward. Okay, any question? Yeah, I think that this decision matrix is a little bit complicated at the start to get understanding why this calculation and how it's been done. But I definitely recommend you to go through it after this lecture. Do the calculation yourself. If you're struggling, listen to the lecture recording again, or and go through the slides again to get a good grasp of how the calculation has been done. Okay, I think that's all for today's lecture. Yeah, the CSR value, it's determining the final preference. The highest CSR is going to be the most preferred one. Yeah, the weight has got a huge influence, especially if you got very high weight in the one criteria. As you can see, in that example, you got 0.4 for the cost, life cycle cost, which is 40% you're putting weight on life cycle cost, and it's obvious that the final result is going to be affected by that weight. But you also want to do some sensitivity analysis. Maybe if you put a little bit less, 0.35, and that can be a good example for doing the calculation yourself. Put 0.35 or 30 to the life cycle cost and see that how the final result is going to look like. So if you use different scaling number, like from 0 to 100, will be end up the same result? Yeah, it's regardless of your scaling method. You can use because you do the normalization, and the normalization will fix everything. So if you don't do the normalization, if you don't generate the R squared, then you get the different results. But if you do the normalization, if you choose 0 to 10, 0 to 5, or 0 to 100, it won't affect the final result. Can we eliminate dominated projects based on the decision theory? What do you mean by dominated projects? So the way that's the project selection, it gives you a tool. So like every other tools, it's not going to make the final decision for you. So it just gives you some numbers for yourself to evaluate. Maybe you get very close numbers of this C star between these two projects, but you finally decide that use the second project because there are some other criteria that you want, other benefits for that project that you want to pursue. So again, these are just tools for you to have some kind of quantitative analysis. Because especially as you can see in the decision matrix, when you got a combination of the quantitative and qualitative and they are in different range, sometimes it's going to be hard in order to find which project is actually is better for you. And you want to do this kind of calculation to give an idea. So which one is the preferred one in terms of their scores, how they're going to, differ from each other, and how much is going to be the difference. So this is also important. If all the project is, although that you're putting in order, but the values are pretty similar. So maybe you can just say, they're all good projects. So maybe you can use other tools for your selection. And yep, so all these tools just gives you an indication and providing helps for you in order to make your final decision. So again, it depends on your weight. So if one column or one criteria is much more important than the others, then it definitely affect your final results, regardless if this project is going to perform badly in others. So in that case, you may reconsider your weight, and if you reconsider and you're still thinking that that criteria needs to have the higher rates, then that's the case. So even you may not do the decision matrix because you just want to look at that criteria, and that would be give you um, you already decided which project you want to do. So this decision matrix is going to, we just simplified it here. So it just had like 4 criteria, 3 projects. But let's say that if you got 10 criteria or 15 criteria, and you got, let's say, 10 projects, then it's going to be a lot more complicated if you just want to look at the table and decide which project you want to pursue. So, but if you do the calculation, and the calculation, as I said, if you come up with the solution in a Excel spreadsheet or software, just need to put the inputs and you get the results, and then you can just do the sensitivity analysis by changing the weight for each criteria. Okay, I think we are done for today's lecture. The Slido is on. You can ask any question now. Either please use a Slido or just put it in the chat box. I'm happy to answer your question about anything regard to this course, the exam, past assessment, anything. Yeah, Gian, please go ahead. Okay, we got one question here. Is my experience survey anonymous? Yes, my experience survey are anonymous, but one thing that I want to mention, although that is anonymous, please make sure that you are fair in your assessment and also make it professionally. So if there is any comments that is being made that is not professional or it's bullish or any kind of things about the course or anything else, uh, that can be potentially traced. So as long as you provide a fair comment that's it's understandable, then we appreciate that, either positive or negative. It's your take based on the thing that we provided to you, but yeah, but it's going to be anonymous. Okay, everything good with the course except the marking criteria. Why MCQ for a very subjective course? Why not have open-ended questions in quizzes? Very good question. Definitely, we want to have some open-ended questions, some question that you can put your thought and everything. But please bear in mind that we are working in an environment that we don't have many options. And the thing is that if we can do the quiz like before in the classes and everything, and if it can be closed book or other things, then we can generate some, other tools in order to get it. The way that we put it MCQ, we try to get the question in somehow that you can think and not the questions, as far as I'm concerned, most of it is not subjective, and if you think that any questions have different answers that can be correct, which was the case in quiz one, although that's we initially put one correct answer, but after the discussion in the forums, we decided to give the marks for people in that question that's based on their thinking. They chose a different answer. So it's if you think that there is any question that any other answer can be potentially correct, feel free to just send me an email or make your case, and I'm more than happy to look through that. Okay, so let me answer some of the questions on the chat box here before I go back to the other question on slide. If you can, all of you put the question on a slide, it would be much easier. So I'll go one by one. But anyway, I'm going to answer the question that I already put here on the chat box. Do we have always 4 features of criteria? 4 features. What do you mean by 4 features? I mean, we can have like different criteria. You can have 2 criteria, you can have 10 criterias. But I don't get what you mean by the 4 features of criteria. So if you can expand on that, would be great. Thanks. Can you please confirm about exam timing? The final exam is going to be on the 30th of November, which is going to be the Monday after the next Monday. And the time is going to be, it's on the email, the announcement that I sent you. Let me double check. I think it's at 6 p.m. But let me double check. Yes, and the exam start at 6 p.m. You got 15 minutes to look at the questions, and after that you can answer the questions in the Word file that is provided to you. And please remember that you just need to submit the Word file that has been sent to you in Turnitin. If you send any PDF or any image or something else, then you wouldn't receive any score. So just bear in mind. You will receive two files. One is a PDF file, which is the questionnaire, and then one Word file, which is the one that you need to put your answers in. And then you got 2 hours in order to complete your exam, and then you need to submit it by 8:15 Sydney time, and you got another 15 minutes for submission to be completed. But if you submit anything after 8:30 Sydney time, then you would get 0 score. So sometimes the internet may not be as a good a speed, so I recommend everyone to start uploading. And when all of you also upload, so imagine that is 260 of you, the system can slow down. So make sure that you start uploading at least 15 or 20 minutes before the submission is going to be expired, which is 8:30 p.m. Sydney time on that day. So question number 2 in quiz 2. So let me have a look at question number 2 in quiz 2. You know, because the questions might be shuffled, so I don't know which question are you talking about, because for each person is going to be different. So if you put which question that you're talking about, then I can go through that. Yes, you need to upload the answer sheet as I discussed. You got 2 files, one PDF file, which is question, and one Word file, and you need to put your answer in the Word file and upload it on Turnitin. So if you fail to upload it on Turnitin and you get the confirmation before 8:30, then you would not get any score. Could we know the allocation of different type of questions? No, sorry, I cannot reveal what kind of question that you got in the final exam, and you need to be prepared for any kind of exam from the all sections that been provided in lecture and workshops. For final exam, do we need to upload Excel sheet showing steps in calculation on Moodle? You don't need to upload an Excel sheet, so everything needs to be on that Word file, okay? And if you do your questions on Excel sheets, you can just copy and paste it into the Excel file. So you don't need to upload a separate Excel file. But one thing that's you need to show how this calculation is being done, okay? Either even though you just do it in Excel file, you need to show like how this calculation has been done. So if you just give me the final value, then it's not going to be accepted. So although that you're going to do it in the Excel file, you need to show that how the calculation has been done. Can we have exam examples so we can familiarize ourselves with the exam questions? Yeah, we've provided lots of questions in the workshops and everything. And also there are heaps of other questions that you can find online about the project management. So there are lots of resources that you can use. Okay. For the exam, will there be anything that needs to us to handwrite things? No, no handwriting is acceptable, guys. So anything needs to be typed. So the question is going to be checked for plagiarism. So anything that you put as a handwriting or any image or anything, I won't give you any score because I cannot see that if it's maybe just copied from someone else. And so everything that needs to be typed. For the exam, there will be anything that I already. I have never taken an online exam. Can you tell me how to take the exam? Where do I look at the exam paper? So exam paper, so you've done the, it's going to be in the assessment section. So like in quiz 1 and quiz 2. Prior the exam, that's that section is going to be appear to you, and you got all the instruction and all the files. As I said, there are two files. One file is the questionnaire. There's a PDF file that you need to open it and read the file, read the question, and then you need to type your answer in the Word file and then submit it via Turnitin. So all the instructions are given. I know you don't want to give away your exam question, but will we need a calculator? Like, will there be calculation as complex as those in decision matrix there? As I said, you need to prepare yourself for any kind of questions. And to be honest, you don't need a calculator. You're using a computer, so you can use an Excel spreadsheet for doing your calculation. If you want to use a calculator, feel free to use it. You want to use any kind of calculator. So it's not like a previous exam that you need to get permission to bring your calculator. So you're sitting at your home. You can do any tools. If you have a particular software that you want to use, for example, feel free to use it. As long as you can provide the correct answer and give me the way that you come up with the answer, the solution, how not just the final value, then you would get the score proportionally. How write the numerical question in Word, like formulas? So how did I write it in the slides? So I think it's pretty straightforward, and Word gives you all the equation and symbols and anything. And we are not, it's not a math exam. So it's, advanced math or something that you need to, a lot of calculations. So all the calculation that is, it's just pretty easy. It's going to be just like plus, multiply, minus, divided, squared. So this is not a big problem for you. So as long as you can show me how you've done the calculation, although even though it's not like a fancy equation or something, you can just write it down. For example, a square of this, or this multiplied by 2, or this powered by 5. That's kind of thing you can just write it down. What are the type of question we will have, like short answer or long answer? It's a combination of both. Some question perhaps is shorter, some question you need to provide more explanation. One hint that I can give to you in order to be more successful in your final exam. So some questions got more marks than the others. So if your aim is just to pass this course, I would suggest that to start with the questions that got higher marks. That will increase your chance of passing this course. So that would be my takeaway to you and my recommendation to you if you're feeling about passing this exam. So some questions might be a bit difficult for you, and that question might only have like 2 marks or 3 marks. So I would suggest don't spend too much time on those questions, and feel free to answer the questions that you are more confident, first of all, and you know the answer, and also it's got higher marks. As I mentioned, you cannot take any picture. All things need to be typed. Yeah, the exam is going to be at 6 p.m. Sydney time. Can I paste pictures into the Word file? No. Like a network diagram, how to draw arrows in a Word file. You can draw arrows in a Word file. If you don't want to arrows in a Word file, or you don't know how to draw it, you just type it in. For example, you can say pass 1, A, B, C, D, pass 2, B, D, C, E, pass 3, F, C. You can just write it down like this. I didn't receive any email about the final exam. The last email that I received was about quiz 2. Okay, I sent the quiz 2 and the final exam in at the same time. It was in the same email, but I will send another email today to remind everyone that it's going to be the final exam. It's also available. I'll also send an announcement, and it's also available on the Moodle calendar, so you can also see over there. I understand that we are required to submit the Word file only. Is that correct? Yes, only Word file, no picture, no handwritten things. If you do that, I'm afraid I cannot give you any marks, because Turnitin can only detect plagiarism for the typed answers, not anything else. And if you do that, it's not going to be fair for other students. So if you do that, then I'm afraid I cannot give you the mark for that question. Okay, what can we review except the PPT and the workshops? So I think that the slides is just the headline. So one thing that I recommend you to just listen to the lecture recordings again, and make sure that you understand fully each concept, okay? And that is very important for you. And if you're struggling to understand any concept, please just listen to recording again. And you can also search that criteria. Project management is a broad thing. It's not a specific scientific book that you want to read. So if you just type anything that you don't understand on Google, it will provide you with a lot of things that you can read and digest. If you couldn't find it, if you have a still problem to understanding, feel free to contact me and say that, Ali, I didn't understand this. Can you explain it again? I can either explain it again in email or on forum. It's preferred to use forum, and some of you did already, and I explain things and provide references for you to read more. And if you want like a session for me to discuss or explain anything for you further, or if you didn't understand at all, I can also allocate the time, so we can have a Microsoft Team meeting, and then I can explain things to you. Looks like we have lots of questions and no time to waste. Yeah, just the time management is very important. As I said, don't spend a lot of time on the question that you don't know answer. Pick the questions, read all the questions, see that which one you are more comfortable to answer. And the other thing is that don't provide a lot of explanation. There are some keywords that you can just put those keywords in your answer and you get them. So don't write like a half a page answer for one question, because you're just going to waste your time. So if you can just write an answer in 2 lines or 3 lines, that would be sufficient. So don't just overdo your answers, because there would be a few questions, and just prioritize the questions, that the one that you want to answer first, and then the one that you want to give it a crack at the end. What is the allowable Turnitin plagiarism percentage? Can we upload the Word file multiple times or just once? Okay, so you're only allowed to upload once. If you upload it twice, then you get 100% plagiarism, and that is going to be terrible. So you're only allowed to upload it once. And the other thing is, I'm not going to judge based on the total percentage. So the way that I'm going to mark you for every particular question, I look at how did you answer it. And Turnitin will show me if you copy and paste something from another students, or from literature, or from Google, or anything else. And if you do that, unfortunately, you will not receive any mark for that particular question. Although that your total plagiarism might be 10% or 5% or whatever, but if for any particular question that I see that is not your answer, and you just copy and paste it from someone else or somewhere else, then unfortunately we won't get any mark for that question. Can we paste Excel file in our Word file which shows our calculation? Yes, you can. But bear in mind that Excel file just shows the cells with the values. You need to provide the way that is the calculation being done. You can either write the formula and saying that this is the calculation and these are the inputs, and you just show the copy and paste the Excel file with the final values, or you can just narratively type it down. So this is the way that you've done the calculation. So you need, as a part of that, you need to show that how the calculation is being done. If you just put the numbers in your question, in your answer, then you won't get the full marks. So if you use Excel to calculate, can we just provide the screenshot in the Word? No, no screenshot is allowed. As I mentioned, you need to provide how the calculation has been done, and you can just copy and paste your work. I wish exam duration was 3 hours or at least 2.5 hours, and that's all because of possibility of being slow with a tedious question. So one thing that you need to understand is that you need to have time management for your assessment. So, and the way that we limit the amount of the time for exam is because of this environment, because to reduce the possibility of cheating, and because guys, you know better than me that a lot of students do that, and they just share the answers and everything. So, and that's the reason that we choose the minimum time in order for you to provide the answers, and that would be sufficient time. So it's a minimum sufficient time to provide the answers for you, that is 2 hours, and it's a little bit also generous, but make sure that you time manage, the way that you're answering the question. Pick the questions with the higher marks. Start with question that you are more comfortable in, and answer the question in that way. And then at the end, go to the question that you just want to give it a crack. Will I fail in this score if I submit Word file at 8:29 p.m. due to network lag? It uploads successfully on internet in a few seconds after 8:30 p.m. Don't risk it. Just upload it as early as possible. The system won't allow you to submit anything after 8:30. We need more time to type a Word file. Yeah, perhaps for you may speed up your typing, or I don't know. I mean, that's the only way that we can do it in this environment, do the exam. So there is no possible way. That's the thing. So and I think that you're getting nervous because about the thing that you didn't see. You haven't seen the exam yet, and you're saying that you need more time. I don't know how did you come up with that judgment without seeing the exam. So I think that based on the previous experience and the amount of time that you put for the exam, so you can finish the exam within then less than 2 hours. I did the exam myself and I finished it within 45 minutes. So I would suggest, I think that's probably, it won't take you more than 2 hours. So you got almost 2 hours and 50 minutes or more. Again, so things, I'm not very fussy about the time of the exam. If it was like, for example, in the previous environments, which you are, being monitored during the final exam, then I would give you like 5 hours. Because of this environment, we cannot monitor everyone that's what they're doing. And in order to reduce the possibility of cheating, we need to we need to choose the right time for examining, so in order to avoid any cheating. So that's the reason behind of this time. And the other thing that I want to mention, these 2 hours is for everyone, okay? And we look at all the marks after everyone's finished. So if we realize that these 2 hours wouldn't be enough based on the average score and median score and the highest score and lowest score, always we got a chance in order to look at the scores, and if we realize that many of you didn't have chance to answer all the questions, we also the ability to increase the marks for the exam, so that compensates that. Could you provide those exam information requirement on Moodle? Yeah, definitely. I will send an email. I'll put it in an announcement, and also I will provide all the direction in the assessment final exam section. So you will see it by the end of the week. Could we have past exam papers? There is no past exam paper because the course has been substantially changed for this term offering, and there is no past exam papers that would be suitable for this course. Can we just copy and paste the equation used in Excel to show the calculation? Yeah, for the equation, you can copy and paste as long as you know that which equation, but the solution cannot. So the general equation you can copy and paste, but the solution you cannot copy and paste. How is the possibility to answer all the question in time? I take this question back, sorry. So, okay, I think the duration is 6 to 8:30. The duration is 6 to 8:15, and 8:15 you need to finish and upload before the time is up at 8:30. Thank you, guys. We have not yet finished. I've got, I think, some questions on a Slido to answer, but if you want to leave or if you got some other things, please feel free. And in the meantime, I'm going to answer all the questions. And also, thank you, all of you, for being patient. I know that it's hard, this online education, and we did our best. So if there is anything that we can improve, feel free to let me know. I would appreciate it. My aim was for you to learn something new about the project management and the way that introducing some tools for you to use, not just in your future career, but in future life. So I hope that it delivered something that can be of any of use for you. But if you think in particular some part of this course wasn't good enough, or some other things that you would prefer to have in this course, feel free to let me know. As I said, we just lift up this course for the first time this year after being not delivered for a few years. And for the first time, there might be some things that may not work well. So feel free to give us feedback, and then we can use it for future. And feel free to contact me. As I said, I can spend as many hours as you want. If you want to better understand any concept, or you didn't understand it fully, um, uh, um, I can spend as much as time that you want, or I can answer your question on the forums as I did so far, or we can just have a meeting on Microsoft Teams. So I can also answer your questions. So don't be shy. Would be more than happy to answer your questions. And I hope that you're doing great on the final exam. Don't worry about the marks and final exam, and try your best in your final exam, and try to understand the good grasp of things on the lecture slide. Some things that perhaps are the concept that you need to work more, the concept that are more accessible. For example, I can give you a hint. Try to be very good in terms of the project management and project controlling, the things like earned value analysis and those kind of things, very important. Make sure that you do great in studying of those terms, and get full understanding of what is the value of these things, and just look behind just the calculations and everything. Look, what's the concept of this calculation, what this calculation gives me. Those kind of things is very important. And the way that I put the question is not just to ask you to put a lot of values and do the calculation, etc. There are some calculation that you need to do, but more is about what is your concept, what is your thinking, how you can solve this problem. Those kind of things is important for me and for you also, not just for the final exam to get marks, also for the future when you want to use these concepts in your work and in your life. Okay, I think that's enough, but thank you very much. Hope you got a very good last term this year, and hopefully if you continue and study next year, hopefully everything goes back to normal, so we can see you on campus and in the lectures. Until then, all the best, and have a good break, good final exam, and also a good Christmas break after that. Okay, thank you. So let me go through some of the questions that you put on a Slido. When will the bonus mark appear on my grade report? Because until now I cannot see any bonus mark. I only see the quizzes marks. Thanks. Yep, I will put all the bonus mark either on the quizzes or the final exam. I will apply all the bonus marks on your final grades. We have a record of that. I can show it to you. So this is my record. So just in case that you think that I won't forget. So these are all your bonus marks and your ZID and everything that I've got in record. Okay. So could you give more detail about the final exam time? How much question the final exam or the information? I think that we covered a lot of things and how much the exam is going to look like. So the rest is just for you to study all the concepts that is provided. Some of the questions are repetitive on a Slido, so I'll just skip those. Could you give us some advice on how to prepare for the exam? I think that we already discussed that you need to go through all the lecture slides and some sections that are more analytical and things that you need to give more thought on that and just master those things and just don't read the slides only or just read the workshops only. Listen to the lecture recordings again because some of the thing that is not written on the slide, but we discuss it through the lectures. The other thing, if for any particular thing that you think that you need to read more, feel free to use the resources that you can find. And I provided those resources, or you just can find those resources online. If you need any direction, please feel free to contact me and I can provide some resources for you for more reading. I think the time given for exam is reasonable as it takes much time to type sentences and to write on paper if exam was not online. I think some people are more faster are faster on typing rather than writing. For me, it's similar, but I think that's, I mean, the only way to do the exam is just to have it been typed because of this environment. So okay, so we got where are the recording? We cannot find it. So the recordings are on Moodle. Let me show it to you. So if you go to this section, lecture and workshop online, and you go to, then this page is going to be appeared. So you click on the menu here and you got all the recordings that is going to be here. And this is based on the recent recording. You can choose, you can filter it from the start, let's say from here, and you can see all recording here. So it is the first page, and this is the second page. So it's from the recording 1, you got all the recordings available here. Okay. You're welcome. Okay, I think that's all. One more question. Can you give bonus mark for positive participation in all tutorials? Unfortunately not, because it's we cannot give any marks for participation. So this is against UNSW rules, but we gave the bonus marks for answering the question. Okay, thank you all. Hope the best for your final exams and for the rest of your study. I hope to see you around, and take care.